Hey everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. Hope you guys are having a great start to your week. This is kind of the last week of Underreported Stories before I peace out. I'm going on my honeymoon at the beginning of next week, and then obviously Thanksgiving is next Thursday. So the YouTube channel, the Rumble channel, the X channel, the Facebook channel, they will all have a couple of videos next week. But in terms of the podcast, this is the last week. Just for a week. We just need a week off. Gonna go enjoy my honeymoon. I feel like you guys can understand. Plus, the stories don't really story on weeks like Thanksgiving week. But before we hop into all of our underreported stories of the day, I want to talk about a big story that's kind of been irritating me because I can't quite figure out how people feel about this. So every mainstream media outlet is talking about Matt Gaetz and his alleged criminal behavior. Now, I don't want to hear what the mainstream media has to say. I'm an honest broker. I just want the facts. So I'm going to tell you the facts. Then I'm going to tell you how I feel. And then I want to hear from you, sincerely and honestly. I do not think I have the same opinion on this as my audience members. So I'm very curious to hear from you guys, and I have been soliciting answers from you guys in our Instagram community, Real Ones. But if you are not part of that community, you're watching maybe on YouTube or Rumble, then I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments as well. So let me give you a little rundown of everything that is going on with Matt Gaetz. So in case you've never heard of this man, which I don't know how you'd be watching a political news podcast and not have heard of Matt Gaetz, but he's a Florida congresswoman. He's a congressman, although his Botox gives womanly looks. But anyway, he's a Florida congressman who Trump appointed to be his attorney general when Trump becomes president in 2025. Now, Matt Gaetz doesn't automatically become the attorney general. He has to go through the Senate confirmation process. And Matt Gaetz has been accused of having intercourse with a minor and was under investigation by the House of Representatives Ethics Committee before he resigned after he was announced as Trump's attorney general pick. He's also been accused of using illicit drugs, accepting bribes, and misusing campaign funds. Now, Matt Gaetz has vehemently denied all of these claims, and he believes that this is some sort of deep state attack against him, which I'm very sympathetic to that argument. Look at what they've done to President Trump. Look what they've done to pro-lifers, right? So this was all investigated, all of these claims, by the Department of Justice under Democrat Merrick Garland. So what Garland actually found is they didn't charge Matt Gaetz at all. They charged one of Matt Gaetz's friends. His name is Joel Greenberg. And Joel Greenberg was charged by the DOJ with underage trafficking of women, wire fraud, stalking, identity theft, and more. Greenberg admitted to having paid for an interaction with a 17-year-old, and we're calling interactions. I think you can understand what that is. But Greenberg admitted to having paid for said interactions with a 17-year-old and then alleged to the feds when he was kind of coughing up all of the information that Matt Gaetz had a similar interaction. The DOJ wasn't able to verify these claims. Therefore, Matt Gaetz was not charged with these claims. Again, this does not mean it didn't happen, merely that the DOJ wasn't able to verify these claims. So he is considered innocent as we know it. Now, the House Ethics Committee is kind of separate from that. It's got a different report because it just kind of lays out what they believe might happen. They don't necessarily have to have as much proof, or they don't have the burden of proof that the Department of Justice is. The Department of Justice does. Sorry. So many S's, especially with Gaetz. It's actually, Matt Gaetz has a horrible name. It is so poorly spelled. It's so hard to say. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. I'm sorry. That's mean, but it's not easy. Anyway, let me get into kind of the media spin that's happened on this. So I think, at least from looking at all my research and then comparing the facts to how the media has talked about it, the media has created this narrative that Trump world is engaging in some sort of cover-up when it comes to Matt Gaetz. But the Biden administration's Justice Department would then be culpable, be part of that cover-up, because the Democratic Merrick Garland-led Department of Justice let Matt Gaetz go. So I don't necessarily buy into that, but that is something that they are trying to trump up, is that, there's something hidden out there. I don't think there's anything hidden. The facts are pretty out there. The media wants it to be true. So they're going to kind of keep spinning this up. Now, those are the facts. Let me give you my opinion on this. I have made a very right-wing move in the last 2 or 3 years, where I've always been center-right, and I've really boarded the MAGA ship. And it's not to say I was ever a neocon. I always saw the problems with the uniparty. I was never blind to that by any stretch of the means. But I tend to, I'm like a first child. I tend to favor order. And Trump is kind of anti-order. And so I see the benefits in that now. I really do. I'm totally on board. But there's still a handful of characters out there that I find to be weird. And they don't stir me in the right way. Matt Gaetz being among them. So when I hear allegations about sexual assault, I think my first inclination is to look for the facts and to be reminded, constantly reminding myself, you're innocent before you're proven. You have to be proven guilty, right? But when I hear allegations like this against someone like Brett Kavanaugh, like let's be honest. We had a hard time believing it because he kind of looks like a square. He's just like sitting there in his robe. He's got his cute little daughters. He doesn't look like he's up to anything nefarious now. Again, not commenting on his innocence or lack thereof, although I do think he's innocent. But it's just kind of like a vibe you get from someone. And the Democrats can play this game, so why can't I play this game of going off of vibes, right? But when I hear these accusations about someone like Matt Gaetz, like, I don't know. There's just something about it that seems more believable. Again, I'm not calling him guilty. I think he's totally innocent until he's proven guilty. And this very well could be completely trumped up charges. But, like, you can get a man who gets, like, Botox in his, I don't know. There's something about it that just feels a little off. It feels different. And it's okay to admit that. I do think it's okay to admit that. I know that in conservative world, it, like, gets you branded as, like, anti-Trump. I'm not anti-Trump. I voted for the guy. Like, I'm very pro-Trump. I just think that Matt Gaetz is a fucking weirdo. I do. I think he's kind of a grifter, to be honest. And you can still be a winner if you get 9 out of the 10 nominees, right? And there was another point I wanted to bring up. Another creator, I talk about him a lot on the show because he's a good friend and he's just thoughtful. His name's Clarkson Lawson. He pointed out that we, as conservatives, criticize celebrities for being friends with Diddy, for being associated with Diddy, because Diddy held these horrible parties with minors and was so disgusting with them. So if Matt Gaetz engaged in similar behavior by being friends with someone and possibly attending parties where disgusting and inexplicable acts were happening towards minors, why wouldn't we hold Matt Gaetz to that same standard? It's tribal. We should criticize our soon-to-be Attorney General for being friends with someone who engaged in awful behavior and possibly partook in it. Again, I think it's tribal. And when I ask people for, like, give me your reasons, I also hear, which I'm not criticizing, but this all I hear is, Matt Gaetz is an American patriot. That's why. He's going to dismantle the DOJ. Okay. Can't you find someone that's not a creep to do that? Like, I don't get that explanation, in all honesty. I really don't. There are so many American patriots totally willing to dismantle the DOJ's partisan push of justice that don't have allegations like this against them. That's just my take. And if you're a real one, that's what we call my Instagram community. We've been discussing this because I am genuinely interested in understanding where people are coming from, but I haven't heard a good explanation. All I hear is, he pisses the libs off. Oh, everyone pisses the libs off. Are you kidding me? If your pulse check is that person is good because CNN hates him, they literally hated John McCain. They hated Mitt Romney. What? Like, I just find that to be a dumb position, and I don't mean that you're dumb. I love you guys, but, like, I don't see it. I don't see it, and it kind of makes me mad. Now, I've gotten it wrong before. I might be getting Matt Gaetz totally wrong. So if you've got a full explanation as to why he should be the Attorney General, please let me know. Because I want to understand. Like, I don't want to come across as, like, preaching down or, like, you're stupid for that. We can disagree. I just don't get it. I kind of want to get it. Like, I kind of want it to be explained to me, but it's not being explained to me. It's just being told, like, he's an American patriot. And, like, that's not an explanation, guys. I need a real one. So drop it below. I'm excited to hear from you guys. Also, just let me know if you don't have, like, really strong thoughts about Matt Gaetz. Let me know if you actually think he'll be confirmed by the Senate and ultimately become our attorney general, because even if you love him, I still have a hard time believing that Lisa Murkowski and what's the chick's name from Maine, the Maine senator? I forget her. Susan Collins. Yeah. I have a difficult time believing that they're going to be able to stomach a Matt Gaetz. So I don't know about that. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into our docket. Let's get into what stories we're going to talk about today. So after 10 years of crimes against a female student, a TikToker has exposed a pedo ring in Oregon. We'll go through that. Also, cancer patients are ripping the 4B movement that liberal women on TikTok are vowing to participate in. And the New York Times botched a fact check on RFK Jr. that seems really, like, it is really funny how badly they got this. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know.
Today's show is brought to you by Based, my merch line. If you didn't know this already, I'm an independent creator, and the best way to support this show is by purchasing my merch line that represents your views. Instead of just asking you guys for donations to fund my independent journalism, my business partner and I created a line of merch called Based Apparel. Based means you are the opposite of woke. It means you're based in logic, you're based in truth, you're based in facts. You get it. Head over to basedinlogic.com to check out our latest apparel. My personal favorite right now is the conspiracy theorist hat. And remember, when you buy merch, you are directly supporting me and this show. And when you get your apparel, please be sure to tag me on Instagram so I can repost you.
2 alleged pedo teachers were arrested last week on charges that they abused at least 9 underage girls. And it's been reported that the administrators knew about these allegations for years and did nothing about it. One of the craziest parts in all of this is that it wasn't even local news that brought this story to light. It was a TikToker who was talking about this story nonstop on his channel, and that's how people started taking the story seriously. Reporting coming from the New York Post, like I said, parents and students at this Oregon high school are furious. This is the individual. His name is Eric Stearns. He was a teacher at St. Helens High School, a choir teacher, and it was him and another recently retired teacher named Mark Collins who were arrested and accused of a nearly 10-year sex crime spree against teen students. School officials had received complaints of possible abuse as early as 2019, but they allegedly ignored the red flags and failed to contact law enforcement. It was also reported that Stearns, one of the teachers who is arrested, was allowed to stay in the classroom even when police launched their investigation into him. That is so disturbing. I don't understand by any stretch of the means the cover-up of this, but once it's public, once the police are investigating, this is like the bare minimum. Like, we saw with what was the school district, Loudoun County. We saw this whole shindig go down in Loudoun County in the 2020 election. Was it 2020 or 22? I think it was actually 22 that we saw a lot of this go down in Loudoun County, where people were getting really up in arms about what was happening in the girls' bathroom at some of these schools. I feel like Loudoun County did a better job than this. Like, not so much as pulling this teacher when there was a police investigation into him for alleged child abuse. I mean, that is disturbing beyond disturbing. And here's where the story, I prefer to talk about this angle of the story. I think it's the underreported version of this story, although the story itself is very underreported. But it actually, like I said, took a viral TikTok to bring these allegations to light. This guy, his name is Doug Weaver. He's 36 years old, and he used to go to this school. And so he was kind of invested in the story from the get-go. And he was just reporting on all of these teachers because in 2019, this has kind of become a trend. In 2019, another teacher named Kyle Robelski, He pleaded guilty to 5 counts of sexual abuse as well, and the school district had to settle for $3.5 million. And now, obviously, the whole district now knows about this. Okay, this isn't something as quiet as it was once before. Now parents and students are coming forward, yelling at the district for covering this up, essentially. One parent said, "You're part of the grooming process." Another student claimed that when she was 14 years old, the now fired teacher, Stearns, would hound her in the classroom and during lunch breaks, hug her, kiss her on the head, and say that he loved her. Oh my gosh, that's so creepy. She said when her mother complained, the school refused to intervene, forcing her to hire an attorney to explore legal protections for her daughter. Oh my gosh, this is so disgusting. The school board chairman is set to resign, the district said in a Facebook post, and the school's principal as well as the school superintendent are currently on paid leave. Gosh, do you even think that's enough? Covering up something that happened to at least 9 girls, and that's 9 girls we know about. Gosh, it's so sick. What I want to hit home here, though, is that this story wouldn't have come to light without a TikToker doing citizen journalism. And this is a really important story to come to light because, like I noted, this was not coming to light from local news outlets. And I've been noticing this trend in all of my morning news that mainstream news outlets, especially Axios, for whatever reason, Axios is just not letting this go. They're having public meltdowns about the rise of social media platforms like X. They're having meltdowns about citizen journalism because they're so fearful of misinformation. And by the way, misinformation, conspiracy theories is another one they like to use. Those are terms that the media throw around to describe a story that they just don't want to be true. They would prefer that narrative not be true. But let's just play into this for a second. Let's play into this fake dilemma. Let's say misinformation is real, right? Okay. And that these are lies being spread on the internet, which I will say, I'll grant there's a small percentage of this that happens. If you have to take the competing interests of some actual lies being spread or citizens having the ability to speak about real problems they're facing, there's no dilemma for me. I'm picking the ability for citizens to speak up over some lies being spread because the media has been spreading lies for years. So what's the difference? There are going to be lies out there. And you know what, the other thing too is that the media have so many corporate interests nowadays that half the newsletters I read, half the conversations on TV are about fucking AI regulations. It's so boring and no one cares. The nerds care, no offense. I still think AI is worth talking about, but generally speaking, what brings people to polls? What is interesting to people? A story like this, where a school district covered up sexual abuse of minors. This story wouldn't have appeared in news outlets unless it was for citizens utilizing social media to get views and more people to care outside of the community. And to me, that is what the future of journalism looks like. And the press hates it because underreported stories are going to become bigger stories because they can circulate online easier and it doesn't fit their narrative. Because again, like we established, misinformation often isn't lies. It's just stories the media don't want to be true. They don't want this to be true. Now, neither would I, but I still want to report on it because it actually happened instead of trying to cover it up. But that's the difference between me and the mainstream media. Anyway, let's get into our next story. I am positive y'all have heard about the 4B movement in some capacity, but if you haven't, it is a movement spreading on TikTok among young liberal women who are shaving their heads to make themselves, quote, look ugly, and then vowing to withhold sex until 2028 out of the false belief that they won't be able to obtain abortions during a Trump administration. I also believe some of the 4B movement is an attempt to deprive men of sex or beautiful women as punishment for voting for Trump as well. Very stupid. But this movement has spread like wildfire among the dumbest women online. And after about a week or so, these women have finally started to get blowback. Yes, cancer patients and women who suffer from alopecia have been saying that this is actually a very offensive movement for them because women are essentially saying that other women who are bald are ugly. There are a couple TikToks I want to pull up really quick that really showcase this whole movement that's happening on TikTok and the reaction that we're now seeing from it. This first TikTok says, "She fought way too hard for you to be shaving your head, so men don't want you." And it is a video of a young girl shaving her mom's head who is clearly battling cancer. Then we have another video. This one was a little bit more, I would say, viral. That first one, obviously very powerful. You're talking about cancer. But this one, for whatever reason, has gotten 5.9 million views as I last check it. This is a girl who is suffering from alopecia, and it says, "To the women shaving their head for the 4B movement, you say you're shaving your head so, quote, men don't want you. But does that mean that men shouldn't want women that have struggled with hair loss due to alopecia or chemo? Your actions are very selfish, and it's only affecting the women that have struggled with hair loss. Should we not be able to feel loved by a man? Should men not want us because we're bald?" I think she's hitting very aptly on the point of selfishness. This whole movement is incredibly selfish. Nothing about it is genuine. I think it really lacks nuance and understanding of what real suffering for women is. Real women do suffer all around the world. You believing in your mind that you're not going to have unfettered access to an abortion at the last week of your pregnancy in some states is not really the oppression that you think it is. It's very contrived. It's very selfish. And I think this creator really hit the nail on the head by saying that there are a lot of women who are struggling with real problems. Creating one by shaving your head and trying to kind of feign victimhood, it's not cool. This next slide says, "Y'all are making it seem like being bald is a bad thing, and it's really aggravating me. People make fun of bald people on a daily basis, yet don't want to be made fun of for being overweight, ugly, etc." Again, I think she's doing a good job at calling out the movement, the like fat-friendly movement, or everybody, fat acceptance, that's what it's called. The fat acceptance movement. Like, you guys have portrayed yourselves as these kind characters that want to be inclusive of everybody, but then you're outwardly demeaning people like this woman because you want to prove a point, you want to own the conservatives. Congratulations, you're not doing what you sought out to do. You're being incredibly selfish. The final slide says, "I have fought too long and hard to normalize bald women. Us women with hair loss don't take your words kindly, and in fact, they're definitely making it harder for us to feel loved." So beautifully put by such a young woman. But what honestly had me melting down in here was the comments. These were so cute. Some of the guys that were commenting on this were saying some of the cutest things. Obviously, they were saying like the 4B movement is dumb for brain cells, but other men were saying, things like, "Hair doesn't equal beauty, a good soul equals beauty, and you're so obviously full of soul." They were saying that smart men can tell the difference between bald women who have beautiful souls and women who have ugly souls. I agree. I'm sure you're all thinking it. It's the tiniest bit simpy, but at the end of the day, it is really sweet. Trump's election has exposed so much from the online left, especially how they preach this message of tolerance and unity, and then proceed to go on the internet and shout about how much they hate people who look differently than them or may act differently or think differently than them. And it's so funny because they've spent the last 8+ years trying to cast Trump voters as the people who do that, when in actuality, it's all a game of projection that's been completely exposed in the last few weeks. I'm so here for it. But in the name of time, let's move on to our next story. The New York Times is getting dragged for an attempt to fact-check RFK in a way that didn't even fact-check him. It actually just proved his point. Got reporting from my friend Tristan Justice over at the Federalist. He did a great write-up on this, saying that the New York Times fact-checked itself in an embarrassing attempt to fact-check Robert Kennedy. In an article on Friday, Kennedy's published about Kennedy's crusade to regulate the food industry. The paper inadvertently contradicted itself. So here's what the original print of the New York Times reporting says. Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops, the cereal, as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer ingredients than the US version. But he was wrong. This is from the New York Times. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural food coloring made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as butylated hydroxytoluene, or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used, quote, for freshness, according to the ingredients label. Now, what's actually funny about this is that the New York Times is technically correct, but Bobby Kennedy is also technically... Oh, it's so frustrating. Okay, so the New York Times is just being a bunch of left-wing sycophants, and they just have to prove that Bobby Kennedy was wrong. They freaking hate him, so they're just going to spend all of their time trying to fact-check him. What Bobby Kennedy said was that Fruit Loops have fewer ingredients than the US version. The Canadian version of Fruit Loops have fewer ingredients and better ingredients. And the New York Times was saying, oh, they don't technically have fewer. They have about the same number of ingredients. But that's not the point. If pasta is contrived, like if I go make pasta in my KitchenAid out there, I'm going to use flour and eggs, okay? If I go and get it from a store and they use yellow 5 and lab-made chemicals and they're both pastas, am I technically incorrect in saying that my homemade pasta has more or fewer ingredients than the store-grown one or the store-made one? Yeah, technically I would be wrong because they have the same number of ingredients. But egg and flour versus a bunch of chemicals, that's the point. That was the point I was clearly trying to make, New York Times. But cool. Continue to be so fucking stupid. You can't read the room around you. Also, they issued a correction. Not any better. Let me read this to you. Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many ingredients. No, too many of the wrong ingredients. In an interview with MSNBC on November 6th, he questioned the overall ingredient count. Why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients and you go to Canada and it has 2 or 3? He was wrong on the ingredient count. They are roughly the same. The Canadian version does have natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used for freshness. Again, the point there is that the ingredient counts here. The Canadian version for colorings come from blueberries and carrots. It takes red dye 40, yellow 5, blue 1, and BHT to achieve the same thing. Do you see what? But the New York Times had to fact check him. Oh, this was the most important thing that they do with their time, is try to call out RFK because they don't like him as a person, as opposed to doing the good work. By the way, this is such a nonpartisan issue. For real. I went on the streets and I was asking girls, what do you guys think about, what's the first thing you would do if you were president of the United States? I would put it back abortion. Abortion, abortion, abortion. I love abortion. Oh, okay, well, what do you think of RFK? Oh, I like. I want us to be skinny. I want us to be hot. Like, this is not a partisan thing. You have people on the left and you have people on the right. They all agree with this. Is actually such a left-wing thing that the right is incredibly late to. But the New York Times, they have to find an adversary. And again, this is perfectly to my point about what I was talking about earlier, about journalism being run by corporate interest. Here. What we are watching. This is a prime example.
Today's show is sponsored by Freedom 2.0. Think all water is the same? Think again. Freedom 2.0 is more than just water. It's health, energy, and unparalleled hydration. Freedom 2.0 goes through an advanced 8-step filtration process, including reverse osmosis, UV light purification, and an infusion of 432 hertz, the healing frequency of the body. This isn't just water. It's a clean, pure source of life. Unlike other drinks loaded with sugar, fillers, and other artificial junk, Freedom 2.0 is your ticket to pure, sustained energy without the crash. So don't settle for less. Experience the clean, pure power of Freedom 2.0. Click the link in the show notes and hydrate smarter today.
All right, on to our next story. Local news outlets reported a hate crime when they received photos and videos of a burning cross next to a campaign sign defaced with the N-word and red spray paint. So again, this is a campaign sign like what you would see outside of a campaign or like a polling center is what I'm trying to say, or it's like a yard sign, for instance. And there was red spray paint of the N-word on a liberal candidate's flag. The sign belonged to the mayoral candidate, Yemi Mobolade. Okay, sorry. These names, y'all know I suck at names. But this man is a native Nigerian, and he is a liberal candidate for mayor in Colorado Springs. And this all started, this whole frenzy of kind of racial animus in the community started because there was an email sent to local news outlets that attached pictures and videos of this incident, of these campaign signs defaced. And somebody sent this to local news outlets and said, what does the city come to? It was not signed by any individual. It was signed by an anonymous group called Citizens of Colorado Springs, which claimed the incident was, quote, another one of conservative tactics to keep liberal candidates out. The email opined that these racist messages were done by supporters of the conservative mayoral candidate. In an email, it reads, "Candidate Wayne Williams is pushing hard to win this candidacy, and I'm completely appalled by how his following and members are carrying out this nonsense." Now, local TV stations ran with the video, and this obviously ignited a ton of pushback from very vocal activist groups, people who were, I would be offended if I saw a bunch of signs defaced with awful words. Like, it's gross. People shouldn't do that. But this was from local news outlets who didn't do any research and just assumed that this anonymous citizen group was telling the truth. And this sparked all sorts of backlash. Again, Colorado Springs NAACP president said she saw the message as an attempt to intimidate voters, which I guess that's fair. Fast forward 8 months to about last week, the U.S. Attorney's Office charged 3 activists in Colorado Springs with using instruments of interstate commerce to convey false information and intimidate someone by the means of fire. And I say all of that to say 3 people were charged with a race hoax. All of this was fake. Literally all of this. And again, this comes 8 months after the hoax went viral in Colorado Springs. So this hoax was done and perpetuated to help the liberal candidate. It went on. The media reported it on ad nauseum. Liberal activists had a talking point, only for the liberal to get elected mayor, the conservative to be like, why am I going on defense for something I never did? And then the attorney general comes out and says, oh yeah, 3 activists that are friends with the mayor did this. The attorney general concluded that Derek Bernard, Ashley Danielle Blackcloud, and Deanna Crystal West conspired to stage a phony hate crime and alerted the media to prop up the liberal candidate's campaign. And then after, one of them communicated with the candidate multiple times and asked for favors because of the actions in hate crime that were hate hoax, race hoax, whatever you want to call it, as that was perpetuated. So frustrating. I don't know what's more frustrating, the hoax in the first place, or just the general theme of this entire episode, which has been media failure. When I get tips like this, and I continue to learn as I get older, you guys don't believe everything that comes into your inbox just because it fits a narrative. Media have to think so poorly of Trump supporters to come to this conclusion and think, oh yeah, that's totally true. A concerned citizen group is just emailing me, sending me this picture saying like, oh, this is conservative. Like, I should absolutely run with that narrative. No, you should question it. Report just the facts. Propose both sides. What the hell? Obviously, bad people exist. I'm not saying that this was totally out of the realm of possibilities, but this is just a different level of thinking poorly of people, thinking that only Trump supporters can engage in such an awful thing, when in actuality, this is just Jussie Smollett 3.0. So dumb. Speaking of race hoaxes, that's actually going to lead us into our final story. MSNBC brought on a Yale child psychologist to encourage people to not see family members who voted for Trump over the holidays. This woman, her name is Amanda Calhoun. She is a total race hustler and advocates for Black Lives Matter and advocates that all doctors and pediatricians should be activists. So before she has even spoken, I'm saying like hard pass on her point of view. But this video went viral leading up to the holidays, so let's watch.
Do you recommend, just from a psychological standpoint, being around them? We got the holidays coming up.
Before this even goes on, before I even hear an answer, that is such a dumb question to even, you can't even call yourself a journalist if you're going to ask that question. Of course you can be around people that have differing views from you. What the hell?
So I love that you asked this question because, there is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So,
oh my gosh. This is like the over-therapizing of things. Like in a handful of situations, there are incredibly abusive parents who probably don't deserve your time, and we kind of leave it contingent on an individual to decide whether that's true or not. But this is like the over-therapizing of things. Like you have a bad family member or a family member you don't get along with. Like, chill the fuck out. Family's hard, okay? It's not easy. You don't always get along. You don't get to choose them. Some people are harder than others. But this idea that like we need to set insane boundaries with our family, it's just like this over-therapized nonsense. It's your fucking family. Figure it out. Be an adult. You don't need to whine and bitch and complain about it. It irritates me. It's like this anti-family push that far left psychos that claim that they're psychologists or like they're so into textbooks that they don't actually have a vision of like what it means to be in a family or like in a middle of America family. It's just like really out of touch.
if you are going into a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why,
No. Okay, two things here. First, got to address the idea that you're stoking more division by lying to people about why they voted for Donald Trump. Again, no one's going to be voting for secondary social issues when primary needs are not met. And when you're living in an elite bubble like these two, being an MSNBC correspondent and a Yale University child psychiatric fellow, you don't understand that there are people who literally cannot eat. And they're not going to be voting for Dave to get fisted in San Francisco over the ability to put food on their table, okay? So just calm the F down when it comes to telling people that they're awful or they're evil and they voted against. They didn't vote against any. They voted for the ability to make more money to feed their families, okay? So stop weaponizing ignorance about Trump supporters, okay? Second, this need that you need to tell people why they're bad. Good luck. Like, I don't even know if I want to give an explanation on this. Like, good luck with that. How is that going to work out? How is yelling at your family that you disagree with going to cause anything but more division? How is telling them? This is the thing. This is why liberals lost. They think that they need to inform us or educate us. Like we're uneducated, like we're dumb. No, I have good reasons as to why. Maybe you should shut up and listen to me. And you know what? This other thing too, I listen to liberals and I'm like, please tell me why you think that way. And then it gives me, it's like iron sharpening iron. Like I can then take it and I'm like, okay, cool. That's another way in which I can rebut you. And I don't need you to know my opinion. Okay. This is kind of proof that sometimes psychiatrists, and no offense if you're a psychiatrist, but like they're so narcissistic. Sometimes they think way too much about way too many things. It's just not that deep. I don't need to know your opinion about every political issue at the Thanksgiving table. It's not appropriate. I'm not going to give you mine. Please don't give me yours. Let's call it a day.
say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood, and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me. And I actually talked to, adults as well as advising parents for children. I mean, I think, I don't think that you should force children. I don't think you should force adults to be around people just because they're your family. I think there's a level of need to establish boundaries. And if you feel like you need to establish boundaries with people, whether they're your family or not, I think you should very much be entitled to do so. And I think it may be essential for your mental health.
For your mental health. Oh, again, I don't have much to add besides this is like the over therapization of everything. You have to set all of these boundaries with your family. You can't be around them if they don't agree with you. They have to work on your terms. Like, what if everyone was like that? Everyone's that difficult family member that's like incredibly woke and has to be on their own terms. I understand the idea of setting some boundaries, and sometimes families are incredibly difficult, but to make out the majority of families to being so dysfunctional that you have to set these insane boundaries, it's weird. It's weird. I understand that families need, everybody needs it to a limit, but it's at a cringe level, if that makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm saying you can be in these conversations or having conversations about maybe a boundary, like, hey, it's Christmas, let's not talk about politics. I want to talk about all the things we get along with. I think that's a fine boundary. I'm not going to talk about this. Oh, and when you talk about this triggers me. Like, oh my gosh, get over yourself. Welcome to the real fucking world. Personally, I don't think I'm going to be taking family advice from a woman who advocates for the abolition of the nuclear family. I'm not going to take family advice from a party that encourages young women to shave their heads because an election didn't go their way. I think family is sacred and should be so much more than politics. And there are lots of things I think that conservatives don't need to be above when it comes to politics. Like, we don't need to be above, the norms conversation that happens in politics a lot, where conservatives we're supposed to be above the norm breaking that the Democrats engage in. Like, no, if they're breaking norms, like, feel free to crash and smash a few things, okay? They're being idiots, we can be. Like, let's break it all down. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with it in the politics sense. However, we are called to be above certain cultural norms created by the left, specifically cutting out family members. Please, if you are conservative, do not cut out your liberal family members. Liberals, be above the fray of what your party is calling for right now. Do not cut out your conservative family members. Ask questions. Try to learn what motivates them, because it will sharpen you. It will sharpen your mind and your opinions. I just feel like we should all be collectively shifting the mindset here. Holidays are an opportunity to learn, not to fight. Just please, be better than this shit. We want to restore family values as conservatives. Okay? I want to do that. It starts with putting family over politics. Okay? So I'm going to be doing that. I have to deal with it all the time with my family. I work in it. My mom is super obsessive with politics. My dad kind of cares, doesn't really care that much. My sister hates talking about we deal with it every year. It always ends up in something of a fight. But you know what? All four of us get back around that table every year because we are going to be putting family over politics. And I really just encourage that everybody else do that. It irks me that there's a party out there just trying to abolish the family and then encouraging people on network platforms to break up their family because they have differing political ideologies. It's pathetic. Anyway, before we wrap up today's show, I want to change the subject completely. I want to talk about Taylor Swift because she's back in the news. She's got another reason to be back in the news. So Taylor Swift, I don't know if you guys have heard about this. She's under fire for starting her Toronto concerts off with a land acknowledgement. Now, I am not a Swiftie. I made that abundantly clear. So, in all honesty, I don't give a shit if Taylor gets herself in trouble. But I have a hot take. I kind of don't think this is her fault. The Eras Tour, which is the tour that she's currently on, it has gone all around the world. And in the very last stretch, in Canada, we all of a sudden started seeing these land acknowledgements pop up before her concerts. And I did a little research. And it's because certain Canadian venues either strongly encourage or require large events to put up land acknowledgments before the event takes place. For example, the Rogers Center in Toronto. It boasts on its website about opening all of its large events with land acknowledgments. So basically, the production team is informed that this is the protocol at the center, and then the production team just follows the protocol. Now, you and I are probably on the same page. This is corny. This is woke. This is lame. But my problem here actually is not with Taylor Swift. I don't think she had much of a say. Otherwise, we would have seen this on all of her tour stops throughout the world. But we didn't. We only see it in Canada. So my problem here is I take issue with Canada. What are they? They're out here thinking they're going to solve historical land disputes by what? Virtue signaling to 23-year-olds who just wiped out their bank accounts to see Taylor Swift? I don't think so. There's nothing about this statement that is going to improve the lives of Native tribal people. But I would love to hear your opinion. Do you guys blame Taylor Swift for this? I'm just going to toss it to the comments and let you guys do your thing. And if you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the family emoji to represent the restored and caring families we're going to create over the holiday season? Thanks, friends.
Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, Based Apparel, linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.